How's it going, folks? Welcome back to the channel. So Celtic continue on their winning ways with a 4-0 win away to St Mirren in Paisley. Tom Rogic, Odsonne Edouard from the spot, Ryan Christie and David Turnbull with the goals. Celtic now 18 points behind Rangers with one game in hand. In terms of the starting lineup, it was unchanged from the Motherwell win. It was a diamond. Scott Bain was in nets with John Joe Kenny at right back, Christopher Ayer and Stephen Welsh as the centre back pairing, and Greg Taylor as the left back. Scott Brown played in the defensive role in midfield with David Turnbull and Callum McGregor ahead of him, and Tom Rogic playing at the top of the diamond with Odsonne Edouard and Albion Ajeti going up front. So let's start with the goals then. Tom Rogic obviously got the first goal in the game, and I think it is what Tom Rogic brings to the side. And one thing that you can highlight from what he brings to the side, as opposed to playing El Younousi there or playing someone else there, he brings a different edge to the game and he offers a lot more going forward. But is he as consistent as other players? That can be questioned. So his first goal, he takes the ball on the turn, busts into the box and scores. So one thing that I do want to highlight from this is the fact that if you look at the St Mirren game that Celtic played a couple of weeks ago when they lost to Celtic Park, Tom Rogic did exactly what Celtic were missing in that game. He took the ball on the turn and drove in. St Mirren packed the edge of the box at Celtic Park. That Celtic really struggled with that. Tom Rogic was able to get into those positions, able to get into those pockets, and able to exploit that space much better than El Younousi was able to do at Celtic Park. So that was highlighted in his goal. I thought he did really well. From Odsonne Edouard scored from the penalty spot again, a really emphatic finish for the penalty. Greg Taylor went over in the box, and it may or may not have been a bit soft. He definitely got a tug, might have got a clip in the heels. Could he have stayed up? He probably could have, but 9 times out of 10 you're getting a penalty for that, so you have to go down. He won it, and Odsonne Edouard fired into the top corner as well. It was an excellent penalty. Ryan Christie got the third. Excellent from David Turnbull here. He took the ball and switched it over to Tom Rogic. Again, really well done by Tom Rogic. Took the ball down, one touch into Ryan Christie's feet. Ryan Christie finished nicely across the goal, and then David Turnbull got his goal in the about a couple of minutes after the Ryan Christie. Again, Ryan Christie, ball over the top, David Turnbull takes it and finishes as well. So I think it was 3 goals in the space of 7 minutes for Celtic in the second half. Up until that point, it was a pretty dreadful, awful game. But 4-0 win against St Mirren after losing to them a couple of weeks ago or a week and a half ago. That's what you like to see. You like to see a bounce back to that. Thank you so much to Plix for his super chat. And if you want to leave a super chat below, there's absolutely no pressure, but it does help the channel grow as much as I can. Before I get into the defence, midfield and strikers, take some of your comments. Mark Devlin, hope Welsh's injury isn't as serious as I fear. 100%. Plix Plox said, I don't understand why Duffy can't just clear the ball. Again, I don't understand that either, because let's face it, that's what he's supposed to be good at. And then John Grow, born again Bruni, even Rogic impressed, everyone on it, pity it's bloody too late. Yeah, 100%. I think Brown was quite impressive in the last couple of games, and that really plays into the selection and who he's selected with. So I think if you look at the teams that Brown was playing at the top, it was a 4-2-3-1 or a 3-5-2, where he was the main defensive midfielder and you were playing Laxalt and Jeremy Frimpong as wing backs with absolutely no cover there, so he was being exposed with pace. Whereas this, with the 4-1-2-1-2, sort of the diamond, that doesn't rely on Brown doing all the heavy lifting in midfield, and it allows you to get more defensive players. Like, I think John Joe Kenny's better defensively than Jeremy Frimpong. May not be as good going forward, but he does look quite good in defence. Start with the defence then in terms of the performance against St Mirren in Paisley. So in the first half, defensively quite open at times, got beaten on the overlap a couple of times by St Mirren's strength, and Stephen Welsh, who went off the game injured, I thought he was beaten in the air a couple of times, and again, that's something that Jaco James and Alan Morrison have pointed out. He's not that great in the air, and I think he was exposed a couple of times, but he's off injured, so I'm not going to criticise him too much. John Joe Kenny made a really good challenge for to stop a goal in the first half. Again, it was from Brown chasing the ball in midfield, getting caught out of position. They played a couple of passes through and they should have scored really, but John Joe Kenny did well to get back there. Christopher Ajer, excellent going forward in this game, carried the ball into midfield about 5 or 6 times, made some really good bursting balls, just breaking that first line of defence of St Mirren and creating that space for the attacking players. And it's something that he does really well, and it makes me sort of worry a little bit for when Christopher Ajer eventually leaves the club, because I think it's going to be a long time before we see a player of his quality and his qualities breaking through into the Celtic team, or even getting a player for, cheap that is going to do what Christopher Ajer does. I think it's unlikely. Stephen Welsh, again, I touched on him, not his best game, but he did go off injured. Let's hope that injury isn't too bad, because I don't think any of us want to go back to a stage where Shane Duffy is the automatic starter in centre back, because he just doesn't do enough. He too prone to making mistakes, and also it just hasn't gone well for me. He needs a bit of time out of the spotlight, and I think that really and truly, if Stephen Welsh is out for a couple of games, then Celtic are going to struggle in defence. Mark Devlin, Ajeti, a couple of decent moments tonight, would flourish under competent managers 100%. I think the good thing about Ajeti is that he's 23, and I suppose that's sort of left out. Only starting really to get full fitness back now. I don't know why it took until February to get fully fit, but he's definitely a good option going forward, and one that you can build around, because Odsonne Edouard's not going to be there all for the rest of the couple of years. He probably won't be here at the start of next season, so getting a player like Ajeti who's going to get goals into the team now and just blooding him into the team, I think it can only help him going forward. Into midfield, again, we'll start with Scott Brown. He was playing as the defensive holder in the midfield. In the first half, he was getting dragged all over the place, out of position, and was just chasing needless balls and not really paying attention to his defensive shape. Apart from that, hard to criticise him too much. I thought he brought a lot of energy to the team, and I thought that he was actually quite good overall. The thing about Scott Brown, and it's always something I try to hammer home, it's not a vendetta against Brown. I just don't think he's good enough to be starting week in, week out for Celtic at the minute. Once every 4 or 5 games, yes, absolutely, bring Scott Brown in for a bit of energy, a bit of change up in midfield and a bit of physicality, but he's not a week in, week out strike or midfielder anymore, because he's 35. You're not going to get that from a 35-year-old regardless. David Turnbull, quite quiet in the first half, I thought, didn't get on the ball that much. I think Tom Rogic kind of overtook him a little bit in terms of the number 10 role, and he took a while to adjust to that. Once he adjusted to it in the second half and he was getting onto the ball a lot more, I thought he was quite good. I wouldn't have said it was an outstanding performance from him, but it was a good performance. Again, sort of like Ryan Christie, takes too many shots outside the box for my liking. I know he does have that ability in him, but I'm not so sure that it's a worthwhile way to build your game. I think if he carries the ball, be a little bit more patient with it, he will develop into a really, really promising midfielder for Celtic. Then Tom Rogic, as you see from the headline of this, he was Celtic's star player tonight. And again, I know he's a bit wasteful at times. I know that he's inconsistent. And I know that he only turns up once every 10 games. But I love Tom Rogic. I think he is Celtic's most talented player in terms of sheer raw ability. If he could do that week in, week out, he would be an unbelievable player. He'd be player of the season every single year. He just doesn't do it often enough, and I suppose that's why the club want to let him go, and that's why they were nearly going to let him go at the start of the season. But why would you let a player like that go when he can produce moments of magic like this? Think about the cup final a couple of years ago. There's not too many players in the Celtic team, no matter how good they are, that you would pick out of that lineup and say that they could have done what Tom Rogic did in that cup final. Again tonight, with a couple of his passes, a couple of his turns, just breaking those lines, getting into the pockets. There's not too many players in the Celtic team. Even David Turnbull, if you're looking at the number 10s that Celtic can play, David Turnbull, El Yunusi, Ryan Christie, none of those players can do what Tom Rogic does in terms of his offensive movement and even just his first touch, but not consistent enough for my liking. And then moving up to the forwards, Odsonne Edouard obviously got a goal from the spot, but he was very, very quiet. in the entirety of the game. I didn't think he did much. Got into the box a couple of times, got a few shots off that weren't really on. I think we're going to need to see more of Odsonne Edouard for the rest of the season. But I mean, he's probably gone at the end of the season, so I'm not sure how much it matters because the season's over at this stage. But I do think that we need to see more of him in the box and getting on the ball and driving at players like he used to do, like he did last season when he was at the top of his game. But we're not seeing that enough this season, and that has shown with his form. It's shown with Celtic's form. If he was playing to the top of his ability, then he could have almost dragged Celtic out of this mess, but I don't think he was, and I don't think he was motivated enough to do that. Having said that, it was a great penalty, so you have to give him credit. And then Albion Ajeti, again, I touched on him a little bit quiet, a little bit, his movement wasn't the best, but again, we kind of touched on this in the Huddle Breakdown episode during the week. I would be happy to see Albion Ajeti touching the ball 4 times if 2 of those touches were shots from inside the box, because you don't want him running, you don't want him dogging himself, you don't want him tracking back. What you want him to do is do what he does best, get into the box and make runs that's going to create chances and create goals. And if he gets the ball in a good position in the box, he will finish that chance. So I do think he's someone that Celtic should really stick with. But will Neil Lennon stick with him? That is the question. It's hard to know if Neil Lennon is going to stick with anybody, no matter how good they're playing. I'm really intrigued to see what he's going to say after this game. I'd say if the 4-0 win a couple of days ago was the benchmark, then I would say then this is the second benchmark in the space of 3 games. But not too much to complain about again tonight. It wasn't the best performance, but it was a 4-0 win against a team like St Mirren, and that's what I want to see from Celtic from now on. I want to see them beating these sides out the gate, because that's what they should have been doing all season, because everyone else's standard has dropped. Celtics has dropped so far that it's alongside with them, and that's why they're struggling this year. Thanks to everyone who has watched. If you're watching this back and you like the channel, subscribe. There's a little button there on the right hand side. You can hit that and you get notified every single time we go live. I think we will be back with the Huddle Breakdown later on tomorrow night, if not Friday morning, with the podcast. Just the way things are working out, it's going to be a little bit later, but we will have the proper XG stats performance breakdown from the Motherwell game and from this St Mirren game as well. Jaco James will do this game, and I would say Alan Morrison will have his stats ready to go for the Motherwell win as well. So thank you for watching tonight. I hope you enjoyed, and if you do enjoy my stuff, then do subscribe to the channel. I'll be back again next week. Thanks very much.